Only in Kentucky could one county be home to the only governor ever assassinated in office and be home to the oldest continuously operating distillery in the country. Hi, I'm Michael, and I'm learning a little bit more about Kentucky. One county at a time. All 120 of them. And today, I'm learning about Franklin County while I'm in Franklin County. And if you haven't already, though, I hope you do check out the other counties I've covered already. They're all listed in the playlist on my profile. If I haven't covered yours yet, I'll get to it soon, I promise. I'm going in mostly alphabetical order, and if you see one that I may have skipped, probably it means I'm saving it for the end because it'll need multiple parts. And as always, if I do miss something about this county, feel free to correct me in the comments so we can all learn together as a community. So Franklin County was officially formed in 1795. It was carved out of parts of Woodford, Mercer, and Shelby counties and named after Benjamin Franklin. The county seat is Frankfort, which also happens to be the capital of Kentucky. But Frankfort wasn't founded because it was some big, wealthy, or powerful city. It became the capital because a handful of people were willing to gamble on its future. In 1780, a frontiersman named Stephen Frank was killed by Native Americans at the river crossing on the Kentucky River, and settlers began calling it a place called Frank's Ford, and over time that name softened into Frankfort. In 1786, a deeply ambitious and deeply controversial figure named James Wilkinson purchased land on the north side of the Kentucky River and laid out a town. Wilkinson believed Frankfort could become a commercial hub, shipping farm goods and whiskey downriver to markets as far away as New Orleans. And when Kentucky finally became a state in 1792, Wilkinson aggressively pushed Frankfort as the new capital. Now, at the time, several towns competed for that title. Frankfort was small and remote, but local settler Andrew Holmes sweetened the deal. Andrew was able to offer his log cabin rent-free for 7 years, while he donated other parts for infrastructure, including like glass for windows and whatnot, several $1,000s in gold, and it worked. Frankfort won the vote and became Kentucky's state capital. By the late 1790s, Frankfort had a post office, taverns, stores, and political importance far beyond its size. One of its earliest prominent residents was a man named John Brown, who was a statesman who helped shepherd Kentucky into statehood originally. In 1796, he built Liberty Hall, which was a brick home that still stands today and once hosted major political figures of the early republic. Now, 2 years later, Kentucky completed its first official governor's residence in Frankfort. That house was finished in 1798, still standing. It's often cited as the oldest executive mansion in continuous use in the country. But Frankfort wasn't the first major settlement in this county. Downriver, an earlier town called Leestown had already taken shape. It was founded in 1770 by Hancock and Willis Lee. Leestown became a thriving river port. Tobacco, hemp, corn, and whiskey were shipped from its docks to New Orleans, and for a time, Leestown was actually a serious contender to become the state capital. Stone quarried from Leestown was used to build Kentucky's capitol buildings later on. During the War of 1812, it served as a military supply base. And over time, as Frankfort grew, Leestown was absorbed into the capital city itself. Now today, its most famous legacy sits on that land, Buffalo Trace Distillery. Distilling was there as early as the 1770s. By the early 1800s, a formal distillery was operating on the site. In the late 19th century, Colonel Edmund Haynes Taylor Jr. modernized it. And later, George T. Stagg expanded it further, introducing several different innovations like climate-controlled warehouses and rickhouses. Fires, floods, Prohibition, all impacted everything, but Buffalo Trace is still one of the most important and celebrated distilleries in the world, still producing bourbon on the same ground settled more than 2 centuries ago. Back in Frankfort, the seat of government struggled to keep its buildings standing. Kentucky's first capital burned down in 1813, the second one burned in 1824, and after losing 2 state houses to fire, the legislature demanded something fireproof. The result was the old state capitol, completed in 1830, designed by young architect Gideon Shryock. I don't know, it's a Greek revival masterpiece though, and it served as Kentucky's capital for 80 years. It still stands downtown today, preserved as a historic site. The Civil War brought national conflict directly to Franklin County. In September of 1862, Confederate troops occupied Frankfort, making it the only Union state capital ever captured during the war. Confederate leaders even attempted to inaugurate a shadow government of sorts in the city, but Union artillery quickly forced them to retreat. After the war, Franklin County diversified its economy. Hemp became a major industry player. Hemp processing factories alongside the Kentucky River popped up, twine, rope, whatever. It was later produced for the U.S. Navy during World War II. That factory operated until 1952, making it the last commercial hemp mill in Kentucky at the time. Education also expanded. In 1886, the state established a school in Frankfort to train African-American teachers. That institution grew over time into what is now Kentucky State University, historically black public university that remains a cornerstone of the community. But Franklin County's most shocking moment came at the turn of the 20th century. By the end of the 1800s, one man towered over Kentucky politics more than anyone else: William Goebel. Goebel was a lawyer, a longtime state senator, and one of the most polarizing figures that Kentucky has ever maybe produced. He was intensely intelligent, methodical, and ruthless in pursuit of political power. He had very little interest in being liked, never married, he avoided social life, and he carried himself with a cold, almost severe demeanor, like Scrooge maybe. Supporters did respect him though. Opponents feared him. Very few people felt neutral though. Politically, Goebel branded himself as a populist reformer. He took on railroads and corporate influence and political machines at a time when those forces dominated Kentucky government and politics. He pushed election reforms and railroad regulations that made him some powerful enemies, including members of his own party. His willingness to bend political system to his advantage earned him the nickname William the Conqueror, and not necessarily as a compliment. Violence had already touched his life long before the governor's race. In 1895, Goebel was involved in a deadly street confrontation in Covington, Kentucky, with John Sanford, a political enemy tied to financial interests hurt by Goebel's legislation. Both men drew pistols. Sanford was killed. Goebel was acquitted on the grounds of self-defense later on, but the incident followed him for the rest of his career. By the time Goebel ran for governor in 1899, Kentucky was already unstable. Republicans had recently gained ground, and Democrats were deeply divided. Goebel secured his party's nomination through aggressive maneuvering that left lasting resentment. In the general election, Republican William S. Taylor narrowly won the popular vote, but Democrats fought it. They in the General Assembly, immediately challenged the results, accusing Republicans of fraud and moving to overturn the election. Armed men poured into Frankfort after rumors of violence spread. The state hovered on the edge of open conflict because they couldn't figure out who was actually going to be governor. Meanwhile, Goebel was actually warned that there was talk of an assassination plot against him. He dismissed it. On the morning of January 30th, 1900, Goebel walked toward the old state capitol. Shots rang out from a nearby building, and one bullet struck him in the chest. He collapsed on the sidewalk, just steps from the seat of government, and was carried to a nearby hotel room. As lawmakers continued to battle over the election, the legislature declared Goebel the winner and swore him in as governor while he was gravely wounded. William Goebel served 4 days as Kentucky's governor. In the only official act of his administration, he signed an order dissolving the state militia that had been mobilized during the election crisis. On February 3rd, 1900, Goebel died. He remains the only U.S. governor to ever be killed after an assassination while in office. Goebel was buried in Frankfort Cemetery, which is where I am, by the way, beneath a towering monument overlooking the Capitol. So, by the way, I mentioned I'm here in Frankfort Cemetery today. It's also where Kentucky chose to place its most famous frontiersman. In 1845, the remains of Daniel Boone and his wife Rebecca were reinterred here, moved from Missouri to this hill overlooking the Capitol. Some historians actually believe that the wrong remains were exhumed. Others argue that the evidence is inconclusive. In the early 20th century, Frankfort built a new Capitol building. Completed in 1910, the current Kentucky State Capitol stands across this river from downtown, crowned by a massive dome. Outside the city, Franklin County remains dotted with small communities and rural landmarks. Forks of Elkhorn, settled in the 1780s, is home to one of the oldest Baptist churches in the region. Bridgeport grew along a stagecoach route, and actually Switzer is home to one of Kentucky's few remaining covered bridges. It was built in the 1850s, but unfortunately washed away by a flood in the 1990s, but then painstakingly rebuilt by the community. It's now recognized as Kentucky's official state-covered bridge. Today, Franklin County has a population of just over 50,000 people. State government remains its largest employer. So that's Franklin County. What'd I get wrong this time?